Hey everyone, welcome to Build Your SaaS. This is the behind-the-scenes story of building a web app in 2020. I'm John Buda, a software engineer.
And I'm Justin Jackson, and I'm just an idiot from the internet. Follow along as we build Transistor.fm.
Oh, 2020.
2020, welcome back. People,
back in the microphone chair.
Yep, back in the microphone chair. People have been wanting you to be back.
Yeah, I'm back.
Tired of me talking.
I'm back. I wish we could have a redo on 2020 so far, but that's a longer story, which I will not record here.
A little bit of a rough start, but again, I think we're only 6% of the way through 2020, so you got so much time, John.
Yeah, I never look at a year like that. Although I read books like that now because I use a Kindle.
Oh,
so I'm like,
with the percentage.
I don't know what page I'm on, but I'm like, I'm 24% done.
That's true. Do you think those percentages give people a baseline anxiety?
I don't know. I'm not too anxious by it.
Can I recommend a book right off the top? This is an old book. It's called The Timeless Way of Building. It's by Christopher Alexander. It was actually expensive. It was $56.58 Canadian.
Huh, it's probably not printed anymore, I would guess.
Yeah, it's old print. Like when you get it, you can tell. I think it was printed on a machine, like not digital, and it is fantastic. Even if you're not interested in, it's loosely about building, but I have found it just so good for the soul. He's using like houses and towns, the places we live, as a way for us to examine kind of just like the patterns of life. And so I'm looking at everything through this lens now. So I was just thinking, it's quite popular. There's this Twitter account that gets retweeted all the time about like percentage of the year left or whatever.
Right.
And I was just thinking, and then you said, oh yeah, in Kindle, I know how much of the book, what percentage of the book I've completed. That's an interesting pattern, both of those. And sometimes those patterns get implemented or we allow ourselves to be exposed to things like that, but we never think like, is this good for us?
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. Like, yeah, Kindle, I don't ever really get anxious about the page or how much is left and unless it's going slowly. Mm-hmm. But also with Kindle, you can toggle it. So it's like, it does actually have page numbers that refer to the actual paper page. So you can switch to that if you want.
Oh, nice.
But you can also switch to how much time there is left in reading it based on how fast you read.
Oh, wow.
Depending on the size of the book, that is anxiety causing. Because it's like, sometimes it's like you have 16 hours of reading left or whatever.
20 years.
20 years. I think I read the Harry Potter books a few years ago, finally, all of them.
Yeah.
But in Kindle, it was like free for Prime members or whatever, free for all 7 books as one book.
Oh, wow.
Basically, you download it as one book. So when I started it was like, you have 72 hours left of reading or what? It's like, oh my.
There's this whole movement towards like the quantified self and like the quantified everything. And there are some things that maybe we just shouldn't quantify.
Yeah, probably.
Because if you're going to enjoy something, I'm actually a big fan of short books. I love like a book I can just grab and just read and be done in an afternoon. For me, I'd almost pay more for that.
Yeah, I don't mind long books. I like shorter chapters.
Oh, interesting.
So you have better stopping points.
Mm-hmm.
So if you only have a certain amount of time to read, you can, 10 minutes and you're done with the chapter, and then
you can just like let it go.
Yeah.
Back to this book for just a sec. I think it actually intersects with something that you and I have talked about. When you work for yourself or you work remotely, there can be a sense of loneliness or sometimes anxiety, sometimes a kind of direction, like you don't know what direction to go, or a sense of not being grounded. Mm-hmm. Is any of this making sense, or am I?
Yeah.
The one thing that I have found helpful for me, these patterns that I kind of started them by accident, but I have this one pattern where I get up and I walk to my office, which is about 30 minutes. And often I'll listen to podcasts, but I'm trying to increasingly not do that all the time. And just pay attention, like be in the moment and pay attention to what's happening. And it's amazing the things I notice on the way to the office. Like, I don't know, like a certain type of moss on a tree. Today I noticed that it froze overnight. And so the sidewalks are really slippery, but only the new sidewalks, the old sidewalks that were made in like the late 1800s that are like more gritty, you know?
Yeah.
They're not slippy.
Huh.
And I know this is silly. This is probably boring for people, but there's something about that mindfulness and that pattern, that tradition of walking to my office, even though I could drive and I'd be here in 5 minutes. That's been really helpful for me in my work life. Just having this feeling of, yeah, of course I'm going to walk. And then when I'm walking, I'm like, it's this, the spirit of this is hard to explain, but I think you can probably understand what I'm saying. You know, whenever you feel in the moment or whenever you do something continuously that almost puts you in a meditative state, like maybe it's running for you or cycling or swimming.
Yeah, I mean, running for me, I rarely ever listen to anything. Like I don't usually wear headphones. I just run and just pay attention to stuff around me.
Yeah. Have you ever had success with actual meditating?
No, I haven't really tried though either.
I wonder if that's because that's a big trend for founders and in Silicon Valley. I've always struggled with it. And as I was walking today, I'm like, this is way better than meditation for me.
It's possible you get the same benefits from it, or I get the same benefits by running. I mean, I don't know. It might be the same brain effects that you get.
It's interesting because in the Jewish and I think the Christian tradition, meditating, like that word doesn't mean sitting still. It means to repeat over and over again. So you'll like, if you're meditating on something, you're like repeating a concept over and over again, or a phrase or something. It's like considering something kind of in the moment, but there's this pattern to it. When I think about walking or running or cycling or swimming, there's always this cycle. It's like stroke, breathe, or whatever.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I would swim for hours, right? And basically all you were doing was paying attention to your stroke and your form, and that's a pattern. That's really all you think about.
And I think to me, that is kind of the benefit of meditation, is that meditation often kind of anchors on the breath, which is like breathe in, breathe out. But I'm just opening people's minds to the idea that maybe there's other things like, you know, your steps, walk, you're running, dunk, 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 dunk. You're cycling. It's like, woo, woo, woo. There's this like, and then swimming. And I found that interesting. And those kinds of things, like if you leave them out of your life for too long, like if you haven't gone swimming, like Jamie, my friend Jamie in Ireland, he goes swimming. And I think if he doesn't go swimming, he's like not good. So he swims all the time. And I'm guessing that part of the attraction is just that you're in the water, you're closed off to every other kind of input because you're underwater.
Yeah. I mean, almost. Yeah. Sound too, almost. Yeah. I've definitely felt it in the last month that I've gotten, last couple of months, I've gotten out of that habit or that rhythm of working out as often, and especially swimming. But I can certainly relate to that. And
even this pattern of you and I talking on this show every week, and also I think it's easy. We have a Tuesday call that I think is easy for me to skip. Like, do we need to talk? Nah. But there is something about the pattern of that, the continuousness of that, the rhythm of that all feeds into really how well we're doing. I think that's just something good to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Like when I was depressed, the first thing my doctor told me to do was like quit drinking booze and start exercising more.
Yeah.
And part of it, I think, is just getting into these patterns that kind of contribute to an overall wellness. Nothing happens overnight, but as you kind of engage in these things over and over again, week by week, they're healthy for you. it is, I think there is something about that of, again, with you and I, making sure we do connect, even if we don't feel like it or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I never regret it whenever we do. Certainly. It's never like, that was a waste of time. It was always something always good comes out of it.
Yeah. You've never regretted it?
Never, not once. Except that one time. No, but I think that, so you walked to the office today, but you didn't listen to podcasts, right? Or anything.
Yeah.
Or look at your phone. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you did, but I always wonder so in Chicago, right? You got the train and the buses and you go on those things and almost everyone is doing something, looking at their phone or whatever.
Yeah.
I always wonder what would happen if all of a sudden all the phones just disappeared. Like, what would those bus rides and train rides be like?
Yeah.
Would people just be looking around at each other like, what do we do? Or would they actually talk? Or what? Maybe they notice things they never noticed because they're just looking at their phone the whole time. I don't.
Context is important. And like when I'm driving my car, I'm not paying attention to anything. Everything is whizzing by so fast that you're almost in a different mode. I'm not saying that people can't engage on public transit, but I can understand how that environment would lead to less engagement. Whereas if you're walking and this happened to me today, someone's coming like way 4 or 5 blocks away and I can see him coming towards me. And I know we're going to have some sort of interaction, right? Because we can see each other. To ignore each other as good Canadians would be, it would just be rude. And so we had this brief moment of laughing about how slippery the sidewalks were. And it was literally in passing. But the environment in this case contributed to that interaction. Whereas if we get on the bus, it's a bit trickier because I'm already feeling constricted because I'm in this metal tube. I can't escape. I can't take a different path. I can't, I have no choices. And so I understand why that might lead to more antisocial behavior.
Yeah. Yep.
Which is, it's just like anything, like the activities we do matter and the context we're in matters. Again, this book is just like opening me up to that idea. Like the way we build our houses, the way we organize our towns, all of these things lead to, contribute to our lives. And then, I've thought about walking versus driving a lot because just the difference in terms of how connected and grounded I feel is night and day. Or even opening myself up to being the type of person who goes into a coffee shop and talks to people.
Yeah.
It's a switch I had to flip, and once I did it, that pattern kind of contributed to my overall feeling of connectedness and life and all those other things. 15 minutes in. Sorry, folks. I'm not sure if that was helpful or not. Tell me what you think at Build Your SaaS. Let's get back to what people really want to hear about, which is, John, what have you been working on?
What have I been doing? That's a good question. I have not been totally absent. Haven't been recording the show.
Yeah.
I have been working on a few things behind the scenes. I mean, a lot of it's, customer service and just fixing bugs. I know one of the things we talked about before the holidays or early December was hoping to have some time over the holidays to let your mind kind of wander and think about some new stuff or trying to redo some parts of the application that we've been wanting to redo. And one of those was rebuilding our dashboard so that it is, a little bit more flexible, a little bit more mobile friendly, not really changing it necessarily. We're not going to redesign the whole thing. Mm-hmm. It's going to be similar. We're just going to update kind of the design library we use.
Yeah.
We've been using, up to this point, Semantic UI, which is just this all-in-one design library.
And that's both CSS and JavaScript, right?
Yeah, it's CSS with a handful of JavaScript components that make a few things easy to do. But it's really it's nice for what it is. It's tricky to get things working well in mobile, and it also really hasn't been updated in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just kind of like falling by the wayside. It uses jQuery, which is fine. I mean, there's no problem with that. But it's just like, I don't know. We needed something a little more flexible. So we ended up using Tailwind CSS for our marketing site,
Mm-hmm.
which I eventually grew to like. And so the idea was to use that for our dashboard. So I've been kind of playing around with that for the last couple of weeks and just building out a base. Like first getting it integrated into a Rails app. I just started a new Rails app fresh just for this.
Oh, wow.
Just to make sure I could get Tailwind integrated easily within like the whole deployment process and the whole asset pipeline that Rails has.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually we'll just extract out what I did and port it over to the actual.
Was there any hiccups in that process?
There were a few. There's some good tutorials online. I forget exactly what the hiccups were, but
So other people have had to do this. You're not the first person to use Bootstrap Tailwind and Rails.
No, it's mostly like because the preferred way to do things now is with Webpack and Webpacker.
I've heard people do not like Webpack.
I don't know what the alternative is. There's so many.
But people complain about it and say it's the worst. Is it the worst?
I think it's people on the internet. They complain about everything. So it's fine. It's fine. I don't know. It's not the worst.
Okay.
It's fine.
It's not the worst. Okay.
It's fine. If people have alternatives that are better, like by all means, let us know. But seems fine. It took some getting used to. I mean, you're basically like configuring everything with JavaScript.
Mm-hmm.
Like Webpack is a JavaScript like asset library, but you're like configuring CSS with JavaScript. It's weird. I don't know. I guess that's the way things are going. So yeah, no, it's basically just a minimal Rails app so I could get things going. Using the templating language with Rails and stuff like that, and just building out a basic framework for our dashboard, like navigation menus, the basic layout, some special components we use, form styling, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been nice. I've been just kind of playing around with it, I'm still getting the hang of it and all the little, different things you can do with Tailwind. Eventually I'll end up extracting all the crazy HTML I'm writing into actual Tailwind components that you can reuse over and over.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's been nice. It works great in mobile. It's super basic right now. It's not functional, but there's a lot of things I got in touch, or you got me connected with Adam Wathen, who's one of the authors of it. I have a few questions I can ask him about, I don't know, upcoming versions of Tailwind or how to do some sort of like animation transition stuff that I think he's building into it.
Oh, cool. It's cool that the internet does allow us to connect with people.
Right.
Like when you're learning something, what I've realized, maybe other people are different, but what I've especially learned from Adam is he reaches out all the time. Like he messages me and other folks a lot to get their feedback on things, to ask them how they do things. He'll ask publicly on Twitter and get a bunch of responses. And that ability to connect with folks and solicit their ideas or get their opinions or jump on a tuple, thing. And
yeah, I never know. I know Adam pretty well, but I'm always like, am I bothering these people? Like they have a lot going on. Adam seems busy and he's doing a lot and probably has a lot of people asking him for stuff. It's like, I don't want him to be tech support.
Yeah,
because there's a community around Tailwind too, which I can just go and ask or Google stuff. But
when this is like a little bit different, I think, because he's my friend and I introduced you to him, and so now you guys are friends.
Yeah, right.
And also, I think, okay, I can see how this can be tricky, but like I don't want people I don't know just always reaching out to me and asking me constant questions. But on the other hand, I'm open to some of that, and also I think, just like anything, if you're part of the community on the web that is constantly sharing your journey and talking about what you're doing and making connections and contributing. If your avatar shows up enough in my life, eventually I'm going to be, and if I like you, eventually I'll be open to anything,
Yeah.
Like,
right.
A guy reached out to me, and I couldn't remember him, but he reached out and he said, "Hey man, we talked at Laracon after your talk," and I remembered briefly kind of having the conversation, and he asked me to post something for him on Product Hunt, which I normally don't do, but because we'd had some sort of connection, I was like, "Yeah, I'll do that. That's fine."
Yeah. Nice.
Anyway,
It's been good. I think the main thing that I'm a little bit, I don't know, concerned about is that we were using some of those components within Semantic UI that help with like modals and calendars and autocompletes on drop downs and stuff like that I'm going to have to find some alternatives for.
Yeah.
And that involves, either custom JavaScript or finding a library that's just native JavaScript, doesn't use jQuery.
So does Semantic UI have like a calendar module or something?
It had a module that someone else built
Okay.
that used the semantic styling.
Yeah.
Which was like a super easy drop in, and I haven't found an alternative that works similarly, because we have calendar. There's a million calendar plugins, but not many of them allow you to choose the time. Because we have a calendar thing that's like, choose a date you want to publish an episode on and choose a time you want it to be published.
Yeah.
And the time part is just like, it's a weird UI interaction anyway. I don't know. There's no great way to do it, but
this was an exact conversation that Caleb Porzio and Colburn had on their podcast, No Plans to Merge. And I think that was part of Caleb's inspiration to build Alpine. Was
right.
He wanted to create, I don't think he's like the calendar part's there yet, but he was like, this is ridiculous. Like if you've ever had to make a calendar, this is nuts.
I'll have to reach out to him, because you actually connected me to him too. I was about to talk about that. So I actually looked into Alpine and started using it for our new dashboard, and it seems to be, it's like kind of exactly what I've been looking for, which is a JavaScript library that's not jQuery, that allows you to do kind of on-page interactions in a way that it's not built around a library that's meant for single-page apps like Vue or React. It looks like Vue. It's like you actually write it like you would Vue syntax, but it's meant for, pages that are rendered on a server. Sprinkle in some JavaScript, do things like, showing, hiding menus, doing animations. There's two-way data binding, so you can, if you're typing into a form element, you can update text somewhere else. There's a lot of nice stuff like that, but it's every page reload, you're running JavaScript. You don't have this whole library built around this single page app where you have to control the state of the page in JavaScript. So it's been really nice. I had it up and running in 5 minutes and was doing what I wanted to do.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I want to try it out, because I remember I had tried to build a little drop-down thing, and Adam showed me how to do it in Vue. And then you came and looked at it and said, this is too heavy for a drop-down. And then you rewrote it in vanilla.
Yeah, I don't think you'd really want to use Alpine for that, even if it was just that. If it's just one drop-down, it's still a whole library you're loading that does a lot of other stuff. But if you're building a dashboard with a bunch of different interactions, it kind of makes sense to...
So do you think there's a world in which, because Alpine's really new, is there a world in which folks start building modules like a calendar module for Alpine, or would it be?
I don't know. Maybe
there's because Adam is tackling with Tailwind. He's tackling with Tailwind components, which are these kind of UIs that they're building that I think they're eventually going to sell. So it's like, if you want a dashboard UI, here's 3 good dashboard UIs. Or if you want a marketing page layout, here's 3 good places. And instead of spending a bunch of money figuring it out yourself, you just grab these and then you customize them. And that's like one layer. But it does seem like there's this other layer on top, which is interaction-based stuff, right? Where it's like, I need a calendar, and it's not as simple as a layout. You actually, or because the Tailwind has a lot of form-based stuff, but anything above that, it feels like you need some extra stuff. And so I wonder if, like, are Alpine and Tailwind going to have to get married at some point and create?
Not necessarily. I mean, I think it can be. That's another thing. It's like I want to find a calendar, but then I need to find a calendar that is either styled with Tailwind or I just like design it myself. But it's easy enough to design it if the markup's there and you can actually just customize it yourself. But the hardest part is the actually building the calendar itself and making sure it's, things get triggered when you put your cursor in input. The right dates are there for each month. You can block off dates and say you can't choose these. You can. There's all sorts of stuff that need to happen. I don't necessarily think you wouldn't write that in Alpine. I think you just write vanilla JavaScript, and then maybe there'd be an Alpine component to where you could easily trigger that JavaScript you wrote. That's why I just want to find a calendar component that's written in vanilla JavaScript that I can just use.
Gotcha. So that's,
like I said, there's a bunch, but almost none of them have time, and the ones that do are terrible.
Interesting. It's weird that this is like so much of programming now is just looking for pre-built components.
Right, because it's like I could build that on my own, but it would take me a month.
Yeah.
Just for a calendar.
It feels like there is people are always asking me for, like, because I'm talking about how, the market is the most important thing you choose, and everything else kind of gets based on that. And when they say, well, what's another good example of a good market? And I think that component type stuff is potentially a good market. Like, I don't know how much time you've spent like researching this so far, but if there was just like a killer, like, well, there probably is calendar.js. I'm sure that's a thing. But, if there's a killer JavaScript calendar component that, people work on all the time, and there's a Tailwind option and a Bootstrap option, and you can just go and buy it for $99. To me, I would rather do that than spend too much time, messing around. I think there's, I don't know, like making developers' lives easier is...
there's a big market for that, for sure.
And especially now that so much of the jQuery stuff is so crusty, it's just like old, and it's like, and how many times are you searching for a solution and you end up on an old jQuery page and you're like, okay, like this just isn't going to work. And of course, if you're building your own little side project and you have no revenue, it doesn't make sense. But at our stage especially, and I can imagine at enterprise scale, it's like, okay, we just need something solid to at least as a starting point. And if you trusted the developer behind that, I would pay for that. Because there's also the danger with like kind of free whatever stuff that you never know exactly what you're getting. Like you might start using it and be like, oh man, like a bunch of this is wrong.
Yeah, to a certain extent. I mean, with open source, sure. You kind of know what you're getting and that you can see the code, but I feel like it's hard to complain about it when it's free.
Yeah. Well, and this is, I think...
Which people on the internet still do, obviously.
I think this is interesting because I just got an email from Caleb who, like, he took a year off work. I think actually he's in his second year now. And he's been building these things, Livewire and Alpine, for free. Like, he's just been using kind of his time off to do this. But now he's like, okay, I need to make some money. And he's trying to figure out the way to do that. And right now, he's trying out GitHub sponsorships, for example. And that might work. Maybe that is a good way to do it. Adam, on the other hand, he's kind of having this struggle too. He's got Tailwind, which is this free open source thing. And he's like, okay, well, we've taken 2 years or whatever to build this, but what are we going to do to make it sustainable? And what I've been advocating for him to do is to, build these UI components and sell those. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the market values some of this stuff. I just kind of find it interesting from an intellectual point of view, because we know that developers and software companies and companies that use, that have to program stuff, we know that they pay for things. Like they're buying Adam's book, Refactoring UI. They're buying what's that Rails gem that everyone buys? Sidekick?
Yeah.
So they're buying Sidekick.
Yeah, that's a great example because you don't have to buy that. But you can, and people do.
Yeah.
And he makes a lot of money on it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you don't have to pay for podcast hosting either.
Right.
And so those are kind of there's these distinctions that I think are interesting. Obviously, like some things, this was the other, I had this, I was on Nathan Bashez's, he writes this newsletter on kind of startup strategy. And we were talking about Statamic. And I said, it's so weird because when people think about the CMS and word and website hosting market, almost all of the value chain or the value stack gets sucked up by DigitalOcean and, in our case, RunCloud. So we pay RunCloud to do the deployments, and then we pay DigitalOcean for the hosting. But getting people to pay for the CMS, which is the part that you interact with all the time, which is the software that has been thoughtfully built and maintained and iterated on. But in our universe, people don't value the CMS because WordPress is free, and the only folks that have been able to make it work are the people that kind of push those two together, like Webflow, right?
Right, yeah.
And in the podcasting industry, the same thing is true, actually. It's funny, GarageBand and Audacity are free. And so the podcast creation tools people don't pay for, but then the hosting they pay for. And so what people pay for is fascinating to me. And what in that value stack, I don't know if that's the best way to describe it, or value chain or whatever, but you know what I'm saying, right? Like there's all of these things you need to do to make something. The parts that people and companies are willing to pay for and the parts that they're not is interesting. And then the parts that suck up most of the value are interesting as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's weird. I mean, I think people have gotten so used to free software that it makes it tough. But then if you are the person building these components that you're going to sell, there is, I think the customer purchasing them has more of an expectation of support and that things are going to be fixed and things are going to work. But it's also, as the person building those, probably not worth it to support everyone until you reach a certain amount of money. So with open source, you have an excuse and you're like, look, it's free. I don't have a lot of time. Anyone can contribute.
Yeah.
Just issue a pull request and we can do it. But if you're the one charging money for it, it's kind of up to you.
Yeah. But it does get a lot easier because I think those guys are doing support anyway. Like the amount of times I've bugged Jack McDade for the $199 that we paid him or whatever,
right,
is for Statamic is like what I've been telling Jack to do is, I said, not everyone's going to do this, but I think you should offer Statamic hosting and just make it for people that they don't like WordPress, they want to use Statamic, their developers want the flexibility of being able to, edit everything themselves, but the marketing team just wants to be able to log in and edit something. And then he gets to grab some of that value stack, right?
Yeah, if he wants to support it.
But he's already supporting it, is what I'm saying.
But he's not supporting the hosting. That's a whole other beast.
Yeah, but how hard is it really? Like we're basically hosting.
Yeah.
How hard? I'm not diminishing it, but with a 2-person team and a part-time person doing customer support, I don't know. I think there's
Yep, I don't really know.
Like Taylor Otwell supported Forge on his own as a one person. And I've had projects that solicited tons of customer support where people paid once. And I think sometimes just like imposing a different model is the answer, where you say, this is, Webflow costs, it's expensive. It's like $39 a person or something. It's like, that's how much it costs. And people want to use it so badly that they're willing to, but if they made it open source, they'd still be supporting all those people. They just wouldn't be getting paid for it.
Right.
They just put a stake in the sand and said, no, we're we are going to charge for this. And if you want to access it, you've got to pay.
Right. But I think, with open source, I think that's why you end up seeing projects that are years without an update and have issues lists on GitHub that are hundreds long, and people are like, is this still active? And then they get angry. It's like, that's probably why they gave up.
Yes,
is because they don't want to support it, because everyone's yelling at them to fix stuff.
Yeah.
And it's all free. So
I think here's the thing. If there is software that we like, it is beholden. We are beholden. It is incumbent. What's the word I'm looking for?
I don't know. Encouraged? I don't know.
It is something honest. It is blank. What is it, folks? You tell me on Twitter. It is blank upon us to support those things financially. Incumbent? But we are beholden to? I don't know. Because I think the model matters.
Yeah, but a lot of people create these projects without the intention of making money, and then it becomes a burden, and then they quit. I mean, there's not an easy way to support them either.
I think there is and there's probably a middle line here where you can have something that is so foundational, like Tailwind CSS, be free, but at some point there needs to be an economic engine that runs that, and whether that's a one-time license or a yearly license or a something that kind of runs it. Again, sometimes you can't fight the market, which is why I'm telling my advice to Jack is like, man, it'd be great if you could figure out this part. We should probably actually wind this down. We had like so many other things to talk about, but we're already hitting the 41 minute.
So so updates to the dashboard are coming. It might be a while, but they are coming.
I dig it. I'm looking at what you're working on, and I think it's also helpful for me because I understand a little bit of the Tailwind language, and so not just like and kind of how Tailwind works. Whereas like semantic UI, I had to like I'd never written any of it, and so it was more challenging for me to figure stuff out. So getting us both on something that I understand a bit better is exciting. Cool. Well, let's. You might have noticed there's no ads. I kind of feel good about not having ads.
So when I was gone, you just fired all the sponsors. What happened?
We haven't talked about it. You're like, hey, what's going on here? It's like coming back to the apartment when you haven't been there for a while. What'd you do with the fridge? People asked, and I said, I thought we talked about this though.
No, we did. I'm just
okay. People asked, and I said, I think we're just gonna like not do ads for a bit and see how it feels, because it removes the pressure, right? Like we didn't have an episode first week of January, and just not having to like kill ourselves to get an episode out was nice.
Yeah.
But we do have Patreons. A quick note about Patreons before John reads them. We've been reading out the URLs for all these names. I'd like us to stop doing that, mostly because it's just it takes way too long.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's actually effective for the folks that are sponsoring. And so what I've done instead is I'm going to have all of these URLs in our show notes. So if you want to check out what the Patreons are doing, just go to the show notes, scroll down, and you'll be able to see all of their projects. I think that makes more sense than us spelling these out. All right, John, when you're ready.
Yeah, thanks to all our supporters on Patreon. We have Ward Sandler, Eric Lima, James Sowers, Travis Fisher, Matt Buckley, Russell Brown, Evandro Sassi, Pradyumna Schimbecker.
By the way, I haven't not been saying his name right. No. I'm really trying, Pradyumna. But I'm good to have John back.
Noah Prale, Robert Simplicio, Colin Gray, Josh Smith, Ivan Kirkovic, Brian Ray, Shane Smith, Austin Lovelace, Simon Bennett, Michael Sitver, Paul Jarvis, and Jack Ellis, Dan Buda, my brother, Darby Frey, Samori Augusto, Dave Young, Brad from Canada, Sammy Schukert, Mike Walker, Adam Devander, Dave Junta, and Kyle Fox.
And Kyle's at getrewardful.com. He's a monthly sponsor, so he gets the URL. Thanks everyone for listening, and we will see you next week.